into it. So tell us a bit about the Golden Square Pool and basically what it is and what you've been up to prior to all of this issue with the pandemic.
Yeah, so going way back about 8 years ago now. For those who don't know, Golden Square Pool is in Bendigo, and we were saved from closure by a strong community campaign of locals. So in 2012, the pool was closed, and we all banded together to try and save it, and we did successfully. And we've just finished our seventh season in operation, entirely voluntary ran by our community. And it's just been an absolutely fantastic opportunity that we've had to be able to run the swimming pool, but an example of when volunteers and community really stand up and show they're willing to do something and have the skills and ability to do it, then the outcome can be quite wonderful, which is what we've experienced down at our swimming pool.
That's fantastic. So tell us a bit, like, how many in your community and how many volunteers do you have as well? So, like, just to give us an idea of the size of the people that get involved.
Yeah, so with our volunteer base, we have just on 90 volunteers now with the organisation, and it's sort of really massive range, and it's been fantastic to see a lot of young people get involved in particular. So kids coming down with their parents to volunteer and get involved, and it's not only it's providing heaps of skills to them in terms of working in a team and learning about lots of different things, but it's also great for us to ensure that the organisation can keep going. So about 90 of us, and then with our patrons that we get through the gate during summer, we get about 18,000 people from our community come and jump in for a swim over the summer months, which is fantastic.
Well, that's huge. And yeah, I've definitely been one of those families that have come as well. And what I love about it is you go there and you know so many people, and it's a real community. I think, having that ownership by the volunteers and by the people in the local community makes a huge difference.
I think so, Karen. And I think what I really love about it is it's such a wide range of people coming together and using their skills, no matter what they are, to make the place a little bit better. And it's sort of your next door neighbour or the family around the corner who are involved and are running the pool. It's not some massive organisation. It's somewhere that's not local. It genuinely is people along the same street as our patrons are, who are coming up with the ideas and managing everything to do with the pool. And I think that's what's really, really special about it.
Fantastic. So now, given the current situation that we're in with the COVID-19 and the restrictions, and obviously there's going to be a pretty big impact for the Golden Square Pool, tell us a bit about what the impact is at the moment.
Yeah, so it's interesting for us because our core operation of running the swimming pool is really only there from sort of late October, when we really get down there and start getting ready to open, through till we've just sort of finished, so the end of March. And so for the rest of the time, for our early years, what we used to do was sort of just sort of pack up and stop and have a break for about 6 months and then jump back into running the swimming pool. But what we decided to do 2 or 3 years ago is really have a strong emphasis and focus on the other side, the off-season side of the pool, and keeping the community spirit and the value of what we think we provide during summer continue it up during the off-season as well. So we'd usually be entering that period at the moment, and that sort of consists for us of we have a community garden down at the pool, so some work in our gardens, we have a monthly working bee maintenance program, so a lot of our volunteers come down and continue their work during the off season. And so we have that. We have morning teas. We usually have a biggest morning tea as well for Cancer Council, and then as well as our own social get-togethers and things like that, morning teas and catch-ups for the volunteers and our friends of the pool and the community. And then also fundraising is a really big focus for us as well. But with what's going on and all of the restrictions in place, a lot of that can't happen now. And which is totally understandable given what we're going through. But it's just for us, it's sort of looking at how can we continue to keep our volunteers and community engaged in the values and our vision and what we're doing at the pool, but also, and so that we sort of people don't sort of get disengaged from what we're doing, but also that we're ready to go as soon as the restrictions are lifted, ready to jump back into planning for summer, and so we can all jump in for a swim.
And I think also another part to that is that people volunteer and get involved because of they want to contribute, but also it gives them a connection and a purpose, and they're part of their own community. So it's got, like, I don't know if this is as well spoken about, but there's huge benefits more than what the pool provides to the community, also what it provides to the people that are involved themselves.
Absolutely, and what we used to find was sort of once we closed for the end of season in the middle of March, a lot of our volunteers sort of said goodbye to everyone for about 6 or 7 months, and then no one would see each other, and we build these fantastic community bonds up as a volunteer team over summer. And you're so right about the value and the purpose and the meaning that volunteers get out of giving. And so what we thought, no, we'll keep it going over winter. And so that's developing all these off-season programs. And last year, for example, it just worked so fantastically with volunteers catching up with each other on a really regular basis down at the pool to work on a project, whether it was planning some fundraising events, actually doing some fundraising, and really just getting together. And what we find is, for us, the swimming pool is sort of great for physical health and things like that, but it's the mental and the mental health and the connection that the volunteers really feel, and that's what we feel as an organisation that we can provide to our volunteers. So it was sort of catching up for a cuppa and just to catch up during winter, which we really, really love, that we sort of can't do now, which we're sort of trying to find ways of keeping our volunteers engaged, because we think like everyone gets along really, really well and have a great community. And I personally would really hate to see that disappear, and then sort of you had to rebuild and start again in the start of summer. And I don't want to see that happen.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something really important there, which is that the sort of work that you're doing is actually an essential service for community, because it is providing that health and well-being and that stronger community connections, which I don't think really money can buy that. It's just so valuable, and the more connected communities are, the more resilient they are for the future and even for now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's great.
I think you're right, and I think across the pool journey for us, I've had a lot of volunteers sort of come up to us and say, before I got involved in volunteering in the organisation, I wouldn't even know who my next door neighbour was. Some people, I don't even know there was a pool there. I didn't even know the guy or the family down the road. And I think now organisations like ours that exist in communities and cities right across Australia have these sort of, it's so fantastic that people can get to know one another, and no matter what the issue, but to really become friends and to share ideas and to just have a bond with one another, I think is the best thing that comes out of certainly a story that like ours, but indeed any other one as well.
Absolutely. So that sort of brings us to that next question is, so what are you going to do, or what have you been doing, or are you doing now to keep that essential connections going?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So we, as I said, we closed for summer back on the 12th of March. And so usually what we last year, for the first time, we entered a float in the Easter parade in Bendigo, which was great. So we'd usually be sort of planning that at the moment if we were going to be in that again. But so what we sort of done is taken a few weeks off and let everyone sort of rest after a full-on sort of couple 110, 115 days running the swimming pool over summer. And so then what we started doing this week is I've put a call out to our volunteers sort of to see how do they want to stay involved over the next few months, knowing that usually we would have had a working bee already and probably would have done a fundraiser or two. And so some people have sort of started indicating through our own closed Facebook group about sort of having some video catch-ups and some virtual sort of catch-up sessions between volunteers, which is something that we are really going to look into, I think, as a way to keep the volunteers engaged. And I think another way as well, certainly that we will be utilising, is sort of not just closing down and sort of going into hibernation, I suppose, for 3 or 4 months, but to really keep working throughout the time. And so we'll certainly be sort of sending things out to our volunteers to say, what about this idea? What would you like to do as some fundraisers? What are your ideas and hopes? So then once everything is lifted and everything is well enough to start up again as normal, then we can sort of get started and get going again. So we can really start up and get ready to continue our fundraising and our community engagement work and programs, but then get ready to open again for summer.
That sounds good. And yeah, I have with other groups I've spoken to as well, it seems like that this maybe is a time of a planning and a creative time, because there's a bit, not as much we can do face to face already, but if we can keep those connections online and thinking creatively, what are we going to do when we ramp up again? That's one great way.
And I think a lot of our volunteers have sort of said they really want to use some of those virtual mediums, like whether it's the Facebook group or the Messenger or the WhatsApps kind of chats, just got to keep planning and sending ideas around, because they have like the enthusiasm and the momentum to keep going and everything like that. And I think that now's a great time sort of to continue harnessing that and to keep making plans, so that once everything's ready to go, then communities and organisations are ready to keep promoting and doing their work, rather than sort of still being wondering or starting again, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any concerns or barriers with people that aren't as good on the technology in your volunteer group, and what might you do to address that?
Yeah, that's a really good one. And over the past few years, what we've really utilised as Facebook groups, but then equally there are volunteers who aren't on there. So what we've tried to do is make sure that our volunteers who are sort of friends with themselves can pass on messages, I think, to volunteers who might not be on digital means, and to really make sure that their voices are still continuing to be filtered back in. I think that's really important, and especially with a lot of older volunteers as well who might not be on technology. They're probably the people that have wanting to be engaged the most. So for us, it's really about making sure that everyone hears the message from another volunteer, and sort of, or even just individual volunteers getting in touch and just reaching out and sort of saying, hey, how you going? And this is what we're doing and things like that. So we'll certainly be trying to do that over the next few weeks as well, when things are so uncertain. But and also we found as well in the past year, a lot of our volunteers have really taken up opportunities to jump online on social media platforms as well, which has been a really positive thing as well. Sort of, it creates community in itself, I think, on Facebook groups with people sharing ideas and talking. So it happens in the physical at an organisation like the swimming pool or something like that, but then it continues online, which I think is really powerful.
Yeah, definitely. I think those Facebook groups and other groups like that'll be critical for now. But I think that's also really good to it might even be like, if community groups like yourselves and others could be thinking that one of the little working groups is specifically focused on keeping in communication those that aren't necessarily on the social media, or training them up might even be something. I know one community group is actually physically, I'm not sure if they're still going to be able to do this now actually, but in the previous weeks they were going to a person's house and helping them get connected with their computer and teaching them that way. Now, whether that's able to happen now, we'll have to look into probably, but thinking more creatively and outside the box might be required.
Yeah, I think that's really good as well, like making sure that, people are connected, but also I think equally as well during these times, I know it's limited at the moment, but maybe ensuring that like the telephone call or just even text and things like that, because like I think people still, with people being at home even more now, people have ideas. I know I sort of sit there and do something and they're, that's a great idea for the pool, and write it down. And I reckon there's so many volunteers in organisations around like that that would have even more time to be planning and thinking of ideas.
Yeah, definitely. And it might even come down to the good old letterbox drop.
Exactly.
Definitely can't underestimate that as well.
No, exactly.
Fantastic. Well, I might have a look at the comments and see if there's anyone that's made a comment or has a question. So just bear with me for a minute. If anyone is listening and they've got a comment, please do so. I've got a few people that have said hi. That's great to see you. But if anyone's got a question for Sam or any other ideas about the strategies to keep volunteers and community engaged, please write in the comments. That'd be good to join that conversation. So I've got a comment from Gail. So Gail has said, such great ideas to keep connected. Thanks, Gail. If anyone else has got comments they'd like to share, please let us know, or any questions.
I think, Karen, probably one of the best things are there, I think, is making sure that organisations are sort of ready to keep working as soon as the pandemic and the restrictions are lifted and the pandemic's over. I think that's such an important thing because the volunteers and organisations, I suppose, they do such important work, and so making sure that while it might not be able to happen now in a physical format, being able to make the best opportunity of it later on and making sure they're ready to go is important. And I suppose using now as well as a time to share stories on social media and platforms of previous work and things like that is also important to remind people of some positive stories that are going on and things like that.
Really good idea. So Don here said he's up for a letterbox drop. So Don is a good friend who does courier in a mobility scooter, and he's always up for letterbox drops. So thanks for that, Don. We'll keep that in mind for sure. He's great with distributing of flyers and things like that. Not sure if I've seen any other ideas, but yeah, definitely if other people do have ideas, use this Facebook group, because that's one of the reasons we've set up this Facebook group, is to support community groups, share ideas, share inspiration, motivation, knowledge, and anything else, because I think it is so essential, this work in community. And I know there's a lot of talk, and it is needed to support the businesses that are suffering, absolutely, but we want to make sure that those community groups being able to continue to do their important work too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as sort of like businesses and community groups are just so important for the fabric of communities, and they work so hand in hand together. And I think seeing all the organisations and community groups sort of still getting purpose and being out of existing and having involvement in volunteer groups, and so that purpose, I suppose, is still happening afterwards, is really, really important.
Very good. Okay, so I've got a question here from Tracy. Hello, Tracy. Do you think this pandemic may bring us closer together as a community? What do you think, Sam?
I actually do think so. I think there's been a lot of positive stories being shared on social media sort of platforms about neighbourhoods and suburbs sort of banding together, and I think it's reminding people of the importance of friends, of family, of sort of enjoying and looking after the simple things and what's most important in life. And I think it will, at the end of the day, I think, help neighbours know each other more. It'll help people connect more, whether it's on a social media platforms and things like that. And I think once we've finished, people will really appreciate being able to have a conversation with the people over the fence, or meet together as a community and as a neighbourhood. I really do think that's going to be a really positive thing that comes out of it. And I've also noticed, like when I'm out walking or riding or running or something like that, there's a lot of people that stop for a chat, sort of observing social distancing, or wave or smile. And I can't remember that happening to the extent that it is now, sort of at the start of the year. So I think that's such a positive thing to be happening.
Yeah, I would agree. It's I think it takes a little bit of time to get over the shock of the situation, because it's pretty extreme. But once you're through that and you've probably taken care of what you need to take care of from your own personal perspective when you're then able to. And not everyone is able to just now because they're still dealing with the trauma of the impacts for them personally. But when you are able to go, okay, this is how it is going to be for a while, and you adapt and you start to think, okay, you start looking around. I think local is the biggest part that's going to bring us together, is where, you know, I'm seeing so many amazing things where people are supporting local businesses, people are doing, you know, drop-offs and pickups of things that people need. And yeah, as you say, smiling more with people in the street, because I think we're just noticing so much more because we're not caught up in that mundane, you know, rat race that we often can get caught up in. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but, you know, we do sometimes get so caught up in what we're trying to achieve right now. But this has helped us sort of sit back and go, wow, there's actually human beings around us at a whole nother level.
I know. And I've noticed, like, I was on the bike earlier today, and when you're sort of overtaking or passing someone, everyone puts their head up and smiles and says, hello, how you going? And it's so fantastic. And even like the chalk drawings, like on the bike track every day, there's new chalk drawings of messages of people saying, look out for one another, be positive, all that kind of stuff. And I think maybe people just haven't thought about doing it before now, but then they're like, no, this is genuinely really important for everyone's health. And I think it generally is making people feel a lot better.
I agree. Well, thanks so much for that, Sam.
Thanks, Karen.
We'll leave it there now, but really appreciated the conversation. And yeah, and I think, yeah, keep doing great work that you're doing, and yeah, stay in touch and go well.
Thanks for having me, Karen, and thank you for all your work as well. It's really wonderful.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And thanks everyone for listening in. Again, everyone, if you do have other ideas on strategies to keep volunteers and community engaged, please share them in this post. If you've got other people that you think might be interested in being part of this Ramp Up Resilience group to support community, then please go ahead and invite them as well. And yeah, thanks for listening, and stay tuned for our next Facebook Live session. We'll announce soon. Thanks, everyone.